Sverdlovsk, May 1, 1960. An American U-2 reconnaissance aircraft is cruising at 21,000 meters above Soviet territory. Its pilot, Francis Gary Powers, is photographing military installations on a route that takes him from Pakistan to Norway across the entire width of the Soviet Union. The U-2 flies at altitudes the Soviet Air Force cannot reach. It has been doing this for 4 years. The Soviets know it is happening. They cannot stop it. On this morning, they stop it. A Soviet S-75 Dvina surface-to-air missile detonates close enough to the aircraft to damage it. The U-2 breaks apart. Powers ejects at high altitude, deploys his parachute, and descends into Soviet territory. He is captured within hours. The Soviets recover what remains of the aircraft. They examine the pilot's survival kit. Among the items they find is a weapon they have not seen before, a pistol fitted with a suppressor. Small American, designed to produce almost no sound at the muzzle. The Soviet engineers who examine it are impressed enough to write a formal assessment. The assessment recommends that a Soviet equivalent be developed. That recommendation sits in a filing system at the TSN-IIT OCHMASH Research Institute in Klimovsk for the next 21 years. In 1981, it becomes the RG-036 prototype. In 1987, it becomes the VSS Vintorez, the thread cutter. This is its story. To understand what the Vintorez was built to do, it is necessary to understand the problem it was built to solve, not the broad problem of silence in warfare, which is as old as warfare itself. The specific technical operational problem that the KGB and GRU had been unable to solve with any existing weapon in their inventory. By the late 1970s, Soviet Special Operations units carried a range of suppressed weapons. AK series rifles fitted with detachable suppressors and loaded with special subsonic ammunition. The Stetkin APB suppressed pistol, the PB suppressed pistol. Each of these was a modification of an existing general-purpose weapon adapted for the suppressed role rather than designed for it from the beginning. The modifications created compromises. A standard rifle barrel suppressed and loaded with subsonic ammunition produces less noise at the muzzle, but the subsonic round loses energy and velocity rapidly over distance. At 100 meters, it remains lethal. At 200 meters, its energy has dropped below the level required to reliably defeat body armor. At 300 meters, the trajectory has curved enough to require significant holdover adjustments. The modified weapons could kill quietly at close range. They could not kill quietly at the ranges where a sniper is most useful. The KGB and GRU needed something that could. In 1981, the design bureau at TSNIIT OCHMASH in Klimovsk received the formal requirement. Build a suppressed sniper rifle capable of defeating NATO body armor at ranges up to 400 meters. Do it with a weapon that produces the minimum possible sound signature at the moment of firing. And build it so that it can be disassembled and transported in a way that does not identify it as a firearm. The team that received this requirement was led by Pyotr Serdyukov and Vladimir Krasnikov. Serdyukov is the same engineer who would later design the Gyorza pistol, the weapon built to defeat body armor, because standard Soviet pistol rounds bounced off NATO vests. At TSNIITOCHMASH in the 1980s, Serdyukov's focus was the physics of making a weapon both quiet and lethal at distance. Those two requirements pull against each other. The laws of physics make them difficult to reconcile simultaneously, and the reason is in the bullet itself. Suppressing a firearm requires that the propellant gas be slowed and cooled before it exits the muzzle. A suppressor does this by routing the gas through a series of baffles inside a cylindrical can attached to the barrel. The gas expands into each baffle chamber, cools and exits at lower pressure and temperature than it would otherwise. The result is a reduced muzzle report, but suppression addresses only one of the two sources of sound a firearm produces. The first source is the muzzle blast, the gas exiting the barrel. A suppressor addresses this directly. The second source is the sonic crack of the bullet in flight. A bullet traveling faster than the speed of sound, approximately 340 meters per second at sea level, creates a miniature sonic boom as it moves through the air. That crack is directional but audible at significant distance and cannot be addressed by a suppressor at all. The suppressor is on the gun. The crack is on the bullet. They are separate events. The solution used in most suppressed weapons is to load subsonic ammunition, reduce the bullet's velocity below the speed of sound, and there is no sonic crack. Combined with a suppressor to address the muzzle blast, a subsonic round produces a dramatically reduced sound signature. The problem is energy. A bullet's terminal energy, its ability to penetrate armor and incapacitate a target, depends on two variables, mass and velocity. Reduce the velocity to subsonic levels and you lose a significant portion of the energy that makes a rifle round effective. Standard subsonic loads in conventional rifle calibers do not have sufficient energy at 400 meters to reliably penetrate body armor. This is the physics problem that had stopped every previous attempt at a suppressed weapon capable of long-range precision work. Serdyukov and Krasnikov solved it by changing the variable they still had control over. If velocity is fixed at subsonic levels to eliminate the sonic crack, then the only way to recover energy is to increase mass. A heavier bullet at the same velocity carries more energy than a lighter one. The question was how much heavier the bullet could be made before the cartridge dimensions exceeded the constraints of a weapon that had to fit inside a briefcase. The answer they found was the 9 by 39mm cartridge, based on the 7.62 by 39mm case of the standard AK-47, necked out to accept a 9mm bullet. The resulting round fires a bullet of 16 to 17 grams at approximately 290 to 300 meters per second, subsonic throughout its flight. No sonic crack. And at 400 meters, sufficient energy to penetrate 6 millimeters of steel plate at the standardized NATO body armor test angle. The bullet is physically large. At 9 millimeters and 16 to 17 grams, it is heavier than most pistol rounds and significantly heavier than standard rifle projectiles. The mass is what makes it work at distance where lighter subsonic rounds have already bled away their energy. The two primary cartridge variants are the SP5, a conventional full metal jacket round for general use, and the SP6, which has a hardened steel penetrator core specifically for defeating armored targets. The rifle built around this cartridge is the VSS Vintorez. The name means special sniper rifle in Russian. The nickname Vintorez means thread cutter, from the distinctive helical pattern of the suppressor baffles visible inside the muzzle end of the integral suppressor. The suppressor is not an attachment, it is part of the barrel assembly. The barrel is 200 millimeters long. The integral suppressor surrounds it, running forward of the gas port and enclosing the muzzle in a structure that is not removable without tools and is considered part of the weapon rather than an accessory. The gas port system bleeds propellant gas from the barrel before the bullet exits, reducing muzzle pressure. The gas then enters the suppressor assembly and passes through a series of baffles, cooling and expanding, before exiting at ambient pressure from the suppressor's front aperture. The operating mechanism is gas-operated with a long-stroke piston, a rotating bolt. It is capable of both semi-automatic and fully automatic fire, though the designer's intent and the standard training doctrine emphasizes semi-automatic. Automatic fire is an emergency capability. It stresses the mechanism and degrades accuracy. The Vintorez is a precision weapon, not a weapon for suppressive fire. The magazine holds 10 rounds in the standard configuration or 20 rounds in the extended version. The standard operating doctrine issued with the weapon recommends the 10-round magazine for concealment missions because the 20-round magazine protrudes below the receiver and increases the weapon's overall profile. The receiver is machined from steel and aluminium alloy. The stock is synthetic. The pistol grip and trigger group are derived from the Kalashnikov family, which means any Soviet Special Forces operator who has trained on AK variants can transfer their manual of arms to the Vintorez with minimal additional instruction. The controls, the safety, the charging handle, the magazine release are in positions familiar from years of existing training. The total weight unloaded is 2.6 kilograms. Overall length is 894 millimeters. If you're finding this examination of Soviet weapons engineering of interest, subscribing to the channel helps ensure you do not miss the next one. The briefcase is the detail that defines the Vintorez's operational identity. The weapon disassembles into three primary components: the barrel and suppressor assembly, the receiver and stock, the optical sight. Each component fits into a custom foam-lined recess inside a standard aluminium attaché case of the type carried by businessmen, government officials, and anyone else moving through an urban environment where a rifle case would be immediately noticed. The case dimensions are unremarkable. The weight, when loaded, is within the range of a case containing documents and a laptop. A person carrying it through an airport, a hotel lobby, a government building checkpoint does not present as a person carrying a weapon. The assembly time from briefcase to operational weapon, practiced by a trained operator, is approximately 60 seconds. The disassembly time is comparable. A KGB officer who enters a building, completes a mission, and needs to leave with no visible evidence of what occurred can be carrying a briefcase again before the building's security has finished processing the sound of a shot that most people in the corridor heard as a door closing. This is the operational doctrine the Vintorez was built for. Not open combat, not the assault roles covered by the ASVAL, the suppressed assault rifle developed in parallel with the Vintorez from the same cartridge and the same design philosophy. The Vintorez was specifically designed for clandestine single-target operations in environments where the appearance of normality had to be maintained before, during, and after the engagement. The weapon entered service in 1987. Manufacturing at the Tula Arms plant began at the same time. It was issued to KGB Spetsgruppa A, the Alpha Group, to GRU Special Forces units, to MVD Special Operations. The production run was controlled. Numbers were never publicly disclosed. The distribution was narrow, and the operators who received it were told not to discuss its existence. Western intelligence services detected something in the early 1990s. Reports from Chechnya, beginning in 1994, where Russian federal forces used the Vintorez in urban combat operations, produced the first confirmed identification by Western analysts. Operators who had been briefed on weapons not covered by standard intelligence assessments were encountering a suppressed rifle that did not match anything in the known Soviet or Russian inventory. The 9mm subsonic cartridge was recovered from combat scenes. The wound signatures were unusual for a weapon operating at the ranges involved. By the time Western intelligence formally documented the Vintorez and published its existence in assessments circulated among NATO member states, the weapon had been in active service for several years. The production run at Tula had been running for the same period. The operators who carried it into the field in Chechnya were experienced with a weapon whose existence NATO was only then confirming. The 33 years between the U-2 incident and the formal Western identification of the Vintorez trace a single line. Gary Powers descends into Soviet territory under a parachute. The Soviets recover his survival kit. An engineer examines the suppressed pistol inside it. A recommendation is written. The recommendation waits 21 years in a filing system. A design team begins work in 1981. The RG-036 prototype is completed and tested. Development continues. The Vintorez is adopted in 1987. It goes to war in Chechnya. NATO analysts encounter the wound signatures and the recovered cartridges and begin asking questions. The question they were asking in the early 1990s was the same question the Soviet engineer had asked in 1960 when he looked at the American pistol in the U-2 pilot's survival kit. How does it work, and how do we build one? The Soviet engineer's answer was better than the thing he had been examining. The pistol Gary Powers carried had a range of perhaps 15 meters at effective suppression. The Vintorez, designed in response to the study of that pistol, is accurate to 400 meters while remaining below the sound threshold that would allow a listener at close range to confidently identify a gunshot. A weapon that evolved from a captured pistol into a rifle that fits in a briefcase. In 33 years, through a chain that runs from a downed spy plane over Sverdlovsk to a design bureau in Klimovsk to a production line at Tula to the streets of Grozny, and is still in production today.